16-party País Alliance submitted a project on June 26 to amend 17 articles of the 2008 Constitution, 16 of which are currently being debated in the National Assembly. The amendments seek to expand the rights of citizens, taking into account government development goals.
The 17 articles that have been presented today have been analyzed and determined to be legal, constitutional and judicially upheld so that they may lead to amendment. This is because none of the 17 articles change the structure of the state. Therefore, we hope that the reform package will be seen just in that way.
The Constitutional Court determined that the amendments do not require a public referendum as they do not change the structure of the state. A special committee in the National Assembly is currently reviewing the reforms.
More than 2 months ago, the legislative body of País Alliance presented to the Constitutional Court a package of reforms that are improving the Constitution by expanding the rights of citizens. Among the reforms is the right for candidates to indefinitely stand for re-election. As it stands now, officials can only be re-elected once. It also widens the capacity of the armed forces to work for internal security and defines the right of communication as a public good, among other things.
It was announced in the beginning of November that another 10 to 12 amendments will be submitted for review by the Constitutional Court. If they are passed, it remains to be determined if President Correa would run for re-election in 2017. Liz Sherfius, teleSUR, Ecuador.
The police attack and forced disappearance of 43 Ayotzinapa students opened a deep wound in Mexico, a country that has suffered nearly a decade of drug war violence.
The country is outraged by corruption and collusion between the Mexican government and the interests of organized criminals.
During this case, the authorities have expressed their commitment to justice and supporting the families of those disappeared, periodically claiming advances in the investigation.
The current inquiries and investigation will allow us to soon determine the location of the missing students.
Yet the families of the students, who have led nationwide marches and have had meetings with the highest authorities, simply distrust the government's investigation.
With no other option, they want to return our children to clean their hands of this case.
Their sentiment of distrust echoes throughout Mexican society, fomenting an anger and hardened dissatisfaction that goes well beyond Ayotzinapa.
A slogan heard with a lot of rage and with great conviction in the protest is, "Out with Pena Nieto." If the regime falls, how effective will it be if the government falls? And if this happens, what's next?
What will come of this so-called dignified rage? Will it produce positive systemic changes, or lend to something darker that harkens to the country's turbulent past? Clayton Khan, teleSUR, Mexico City.
Christmas is on its way in Venezuela, and whilst the streets are slowly filling up with festive treats for sale, there is no sign of the government-subsidised products such as powdered milk and flour once sold by street vendors in this working-class district of Katia. Just a few months ago, the subsidised items were either being sold on the street or making their way over the border to Colombia to be sold at 3 to 4 times their original price. It's an illegal practice which has created sporadic scarcities of certain goods for the Venezuelan population throughout 2014.
President, we are affected by smuggling. Truthfully, smuggling in our region is having a huge impact. And while we as women are prepared to close ranks with you in the struggle against the economic war.
Earlier in August this year, the government launched a national commission against smuggling in an attempt to tackle the problem. The offensive involves a heavy presence of the country's armed forces on the border between Colombia and Venezuela and regular sweeps for smuggled goods, including food and oil. It's an ongoing mission, but the latest figures suggest that it's starting to have an impact. To date, over 1,600 people have been arrested for smuggling, whilst 14,000 tonnes of food have been seized alongside 6,000 tonnes of vital materials such as cement. Despite the shortages, the country has witnessed little public unrest in working-class areas. Olga Aponte from Katia told us that the people are committed to solving the problem alongside the government.
I think that if the government hadn't taken those measures, we would be a lot worse off. We really would. Things have started to improve quite a lot.
With Colombia and Venezuela having recently agreed to deepen their cooperation in the fight against smuggling, 2015 could witness a return to normality on the nation's supermarket shelves. Rachel Boothroyd for teleSUR in Caracas, Venezuela.
By mid-2014, global headlines reported on the tens of thousands of Central American children in immigration detention centers in the United States. These children, who continue to live precariously and separated from their families after traveling the perilous route unaccompanied, have few political allies in their countries of origin or in the country where they are being detained. Honduras is the Central American country with the highest rate of this type of migration, with more than 50,000 children detained in the first 8 months.
Without doubt, the problem of child migration has been something that we've been facing in the last years, and the Committee of the Children's Rights of the United Nations has pointed out the Honduran government that it has not prioritised the issue. It hasn't been part of the strategic agenda of the last governments.
José Ruela coordinates Casa Alianza, an organization that works with children living on the streets. Ruela says that this is not only a migratory problem.
First, we should evaluate the security strategy. The militarization strategy, which hasn't had any results in reducing the number of deaths. Along with that, we have to say that in the first 6 months of 2014, 500 boys and girls were executed in cold blood.
Ruela has been denouncing the existence of death squads coordinated by the police and military, who he says are responsible of a good portion of the 20 violent murders registered daily in Honduras.
The second thing is the lack of opportunities. In Honduras, there are no more than 3.7 million children, and according to the United Nations, of 3.5 million, 1 million doesn't attend school. According to the Labor Secretary, 500,000 are currently having their labor exploited. And based on the data of the Health Minister, 24 of every 100 teenagers are pregnant. More than 8,000 are living on the street, and 15,000 have already left the country.
Poor children in Honduras face a very difficult situation. The prospects they imagine are offered in the United States make the risk involved in the dangerous budgets seem worth it, given the little hope offered in their home country. Gerardo Torres, teleSUR, Central America.
Although New York Judge Tomás Griesa ruled against Argentina, most experts consulted by teleSUR agree that the country has done well in its struggle against the vulture funds.
I think Argentina ended up winning this battle. This means that the world recognizes that this judgment is totally unfair, whereby what is recognized from there on is that there is a need to change international financial institutions.
Argentina wants to pay 100% of its creditors, but only on terms that won't affect the well-being of its people.
What Argentina wants is equal treatment of all creditors who enter the various debt swaps. 93% of Argentina's creditors enter the swap, and there is a 1% share being the vulture funds that are litigating against Argentina and want to have a much higher return than other creditors. So Argentina's position is clear. It is strong. It wants to pay, but on just, fair and equitable terms, allowing Argentina to continue to grow. This year's law regarding sovereign payment is on that path.
Argentina has the support of dozens of international organisations. In recent weeks, the 133 nations in the G77 plus China have supported Argentina. And even the G20 has mentioned the need to strengthen the process of sovereign debt restructuring. Argentina fights on, demonstrating that its sovereign debt restructuring and its massive growth across the last decade will not be interrupted. From Buenos Aires, Political Review.
The problem is that the vultures believe they have 100% and have a ruling that acknowledges it's 100%, and they want to ratify the usury, receiving 100%. Therefore, this is why they run this campaign against Argentina and attempts to garnish all assets that Argentina has around the world. The truth is that so far had no luck in doing so.
The sovereign payment of debt law was enacted in September. Then all creditors who entered the restructuring of 2005 and 2010 have received payment.
The victory of President Evo Morales in Bolivia's October elections marks a milestone not just for Bolivia, but also for the region.
Bolivia is giving left-wing and progressive governments greater energies to face this complicated horizon, which is difficult because all of these post-capitalist horizons are being constructed in the middle of a capitalism that is truly global. Neoliberal globalization established this capitalism on a global level, and in the middle of these difficulties, more and more people are looking up and beginning to look towards the horizon, and they are beginning to see the light in countries like ours.
According to Bolivian Foreign Minister David Choquehuanca, President Morales' nationalization of the country's natural resources and the government's handling of the economy played a key role in his victory at the polls, where he won with more than 61% of the vote.
Our president wants the integration of our peoples. Our president wants for our natural resources to benefit not just a few people, but all the people. That there be a redistribution of wealth, that the wealth not be concentrated in just a few hands. President Morales does not accept the exploitation of one person by another.
This is President Morales' third time elected as president, and his next term will continue until 2020. Bolivia will hold municipal and departmental elections in March of 2015. Reporting from La Paz, David Doherty, teleSUR.
During 2014, 7 unions representing workers in the public healthcare sector organized protests against the government, including a physician strike that lasted 150 days, affecting hundreds of thousands of patients throughout the country. The main demand of the doctors, nurses, administrative staff, and providers of services was an increment in their salaries and benefits.
There is an unfair salary scale that has only benefited the functionaries, and for workers such as me, there has been practically no benefits.
However, a second reason for the protests has been the rejection of the government's attempt to privatize a percentage of the healthcare system and subcontract certain services.
They are creating associations between the public and private, in which the private will not only be in charge of the constructions and supply the hospital, but also the administration promoting the profiteering and commodification of health.
This past November, Minister of Health Midori Dehavich resigned amidst accusations of failing to resolve the disputes in the sector and of an increase in deaths and cases of common diseases in public hospitals. A new minister has been appointed, but no changes have been proposed to the government's plan, and unions are preparing to continue protesting in the upcoming year. Reporting from Lima for teleSUR, Rael Mora.
On April 17, 2014, Colombia lost a national hero and the world lost one of its leading literary lights. While Gabriel Garcia Marquez spent much of his later life in Mexico, he never left the imagination of his homeland, and upon his death, Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos called him the greatest Colombian who ever lived.
Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Gabo to his friends and to his audience around the world, has been the countryman who has lifted the name of our country to its highest level.
Garcia Marquez hailed from the town of Aracataca, near the Caribbean coast, which was the basis of the fictional town of Macondo, where he set many of his books. However, Garcia Marquez originally made his name as a journalist, working for papers in the coastal city of Barranquilla and capital Bogotá.
The importance of Garcia Marquez, Colombians still don't have sufficiently clear. When he lived and worked as a journalist here in Colombia, he had a huge importance denouncing things, unmasking things, talking about the political and economic as well as the social situation.
But it's his role as a novelist and pioneer of magical realism for which he'll be best remembered, both at home and throughout the world, which has cemented his legacy which lives on in the minds of people today.
Gabriel Garcia Marquez is not just a symbol of the change in thought that Colombia arrived at, but he's also the man who contributes to the new image we will see constructed of Colombia.
Experts agree, while Garcia Marquez is one of the all-time greats, his true influence may only be fully appreciated in the future.